Alright, Joseph's been burned to crisp that he's probably crying in the corner right now. What else to roast?
Oh shit.
Thank you so much to all of you who chose me to be roasted next. I guess it's my turn to feel the burn. Now I'll finally understand the agony of all those poor souls I've roasted before. You guys rock and roast. Well, because I don't know what to roast about me, let's start with my life then. First thing about me, well, nobody believes me, but I'm actually Captain America. Now I'm glad nobody buys it, because if I'm Captain America, you might wonder, who's Iron Man? Nub Spectre? Feels screwed, right? Together, we'll make a movie called The Avenged. It's like The Avengers, but with 50% more sarcasm and 100% less budget. And then there's Spider-Man, but it's actually just Happy Dog. How's that sound? My mother always said that I have a special gift in this life. You were born special, she said. When she was about to give birth to me, my father phoned the doctor to come to the house and help. When the doctor arrived, I was already born by myself. See? I'm special. When I was a kid, I loved watching superhero movies. My favorite back then was Ultraman. I mean, he's awesome, right? He could turn into a gigantic being and beat up monsters from outer space, making a quick stop on Earth and all. That's some cool stuff, right? Little did I know, Ultraman was actually a video tutorial about demolishing an entire city in under 30 minutes. Sometimes, I also have this wild idea in my mind that if Ultraman and Ultrawoman were to hook up, how big would their contraception have to be? Even though I'm a woman, I was pretty boyish back then. Instead of watching Barbie or Dora the Explorer, I was all about Power Rangers and Ultraman. That's why I often picked fights with boys as a kid, and sometimes I even won. And nowadays, I still win, especially if I argue with my partner. Because women are always right, you know. I learned judo back in the day, and that's how I got bullied in high school. Boys didn't want to approach me because I knew judo, and I wouldn't hesitate to flip any boy who was a jerk. The problem was, I always thought that every boy I knew in high school was a total jerk, so no one dared to approach me. Don't get me wrong though, I'm not unattractive. I'm slim, and my face is pretty average. One of my friends even said I look like Emily Blunt, only way uglier. Surviving high school wasn't easy, but I did it. Then I started thinking about college and enrolled at a state-owned college in my hometown. Soon after, I encountered a little problem called tuition fees. Some of you in Europe might not see it as an issue, but here in Asia, paying tuition is another word for going broke. I could eat instant ramen for a whole year and still need to wash dishes to pay for college. But my dad was an optimist, you know? The year I decided to go to college, he said, "Look, dear, you don't need to worry about the tuition fee. Just focus on studying." But aside from being an optimist, he was also brutally honest. So he added, "Even though my income is insufficient and my company is almost bankrupt, you don't need to worry about tuition fees. We could just eat once a day to reduce our expenses." I felt horrified after Dad's pep talk. In the end, I went to college. After a semester though, my dad snapped, "Dear, I'm sorry, but I can't continue to pay for your tuition. I'm broke. Your brother needs to continue school too. I don't know how to pay for your college, even though you suck at it and barely pass any subjects. He's an honest person, see? Ain't no pep talk like my dad's." I was kinda sad hearing that, but at the same time, I wanted to follow my dream. I talked to my dad about it, and he said, "Following your dream is how you become jobless." But what's your dream? I told him my dream was to get out of college as soon as possible because I didn't like it. So yeah, my dream matched Dad's economic condition perfectly. I left college after a semester. Dreams really do come true. Without a college degree, I started looking for a job, and this is where the roasting of my life began. Surviving my dad, I thought I was prepared for any direct insult, But job interviews are a whole new level of brutal honesty. Job interviews aren't as easy as they look. I applied to be a crew member for a local train company, and they said they didn't want me because I looked like a dead fish. I was like, so I'm full of omega-3? Makes me sound so smart. Then I applied to be airport staff, and they passed because I looked like a pickpocket they detained a week ago. Later, I applied to be a backstage crew member in a haunted house, and that's when I finally got called for an interview. I was like, do I look like a ghost? Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I should change my look. So, on the day of the interview, I did my makeup as best as I could. I'd always been boyish, so this was my first time using mascara. Heck, it was the first time I even knew what mascara was. I used to think it was some kind of gas mask or something. I put on my best work dress and blouse, and felt super awkward since I usually just wear a jacket and jeans, sometimes with a baseball hat. Looking in the mirror, I realized how beautiful I was when I made a few changes to my look. I went to the interview full of confidence, flashing my best smile. I thought, if they called me for an interview when I looked like a troll, they'd definitely hire me now that I look decent. Well, I got rejected right on the spot. Apparently, what they were looking for was a ghost crew member, and they said I was too pretty for the job. Sucks to be me, right? After a while, I got accepted as a teacher at a Kumon Learning Center. Now, if you're not familiar with Kumon, it's basically a detention camp for students. You can tell just by looking at the logo. It's like a student is frowning and saying, meh. I lasted 3 months working there because the salary wasn't great. Just to give you an idea, my tiny flat costs around $50 a month. With that salary, I could barely afford to eat properly. That's why I got a bit irritated whenever I went to the grocery store. Like, back then, when you paid at the cashier lady would put on her best smile and ask, "Ma'am, would you like to donate your spare change to support the poor?" I was like, look, all I've got is 2 packs of instant noodles and a bottle of water. Someone should be supporting me instead. Why don't you donate your spare change? I left the Kumon Learning Center and landed a job at a bookstore. I thought it would be a dream job, you know? A place where everyone is super intellectual, reads books all day, and has tons of knowledge. But what I got was a boss making me memorize the bookshelves, clean them every day, and help the customers who seemed to be way brainier than us since they read while we cleaned. It felt like modern-day slavery, for God's sake. It was there that I met my love interest. I'd never really fallen in love before that. Sure, I had crushes in high school and college, but I was too lazy to make anything serious out of them. So, when I started working there, I met this one guy, really sweet, always looking out for me, caring for me, doing all the things to make me happy instead of playing Call of Duty for 6 hours a day. I fell for him and told my friend about my feelings. I introduced her to him, and now they're married while I'm here telling you all about it. What a life, eh? It was also in that bookstore that I grew fond of comedy. I used to watch stand-up shows a lot and always wished I could perform myself. The opportunity finally came when there was a bazaar at my workplace. I prepared my script, practiced my open mic, and finally, the big day arrived. This was it! My time to shine! Well, honestly, you don't want to know how it feels to perform in front of 8 people who are more interested in the books they're reading. I lost interest in stand-up after that, until years later when I started roasting about IDV like I am now. Eventually, I left the bookstore and started working in a hospital. When I told my IDV friend about it, he thought I was a doctor. That was quite an honor, considering a few years earlier someone thought I was a ghost. So I said, nah, I'm just a receptionist. I lead guests to their destinations, and sometimes mislead them if they're annoying. The reception area is actually quite nice to work in, but the employee rest area is way too close to the mortuary. I don't feel safe at all resting there. I mean, how can you relax near a graveyard? Am I supposed to have dinner with zombies? It makes me feel like Jill Valentine from Resident Evil, you know? I befriended the mortuary master along the way, a skinny guy who looks like a living skeleton. He has the key to the mortuary and can enter and exit the room whenever he wants. He said that sometimes that job saves his life. Like when he needs to take a nap, he just goes into the mortuary and sleeps for a bit. Everyone would think he was a corpse if they caught him sleeping in there. He's not scared of dead people. Total maniac. I'm not surprised with that behavior though, since he looks like a living skeleton. Anyone who sees him while they're half asleep probably runs for their life, thinking he's a living dead just waking up from inside the mortuary. Having been stationed there for years, he often told me about the creepy stuff she encountered, from random poltergeist cases to someone who was supposed to be dead casually smoking with a security guard. He had it all. Even though his stories didn't help my anxiety about having to die near the corpses, I somehow enjoyed them. Nothing like a ghost story to spice up your lunch break, right? I also had a ghostly encounter while working at the hospital. One evening, around midnight, I was getting ready to go home. To reach the exit gate, I had to pass the mortuary. As I walked by, I saw the mortuary master and chatted with him a bit to ease my fear. Then he asked if he could borrow $10. I'd just gotten my paycheck, so I figured, why not? The next day, the mortuary master was nowhere to be found, vanished like a ghost. That's my ghostly encounter. I left the hospital because I had too many ghostly encounters, apparently. After I left the hospital, I settled in a mountainous region. That's where I live now. I decided to be a hillbilly of some sort. Yeah, what a good way to live, right? I did several jobs in short periods while living there. Do you know I was an Uber driver for 3 weeks? I left Uber because I drive like it was GTA and hit too many pedestrians with my car. Nah, just kidding. I left Uber because I got hired into one of my dream job. A journalist! That's right, I was a journalist just like Alistair Ross. But it was another dream with a disastrous reality, you know? Being a journalist, you might think I'd be out there in action, interviewing people in the field, covering war zones, investigating murders, or photographing epic scenes like Kirsten Dunst in a Hollywood blockbuster. Sounds awesome, right? Well, that only happens if you're a top-tier journalist. Since I never went to college and the magazine I worked for covered aquamarine life, I ended up writing articles about fish. I was like, what the heck am I supposed to do with fish? Interview them about how it feels to end up in a frying pan? Maybe I should start speaking fish language. My job as a journalist required me to sit at a desk from 7 to 4, on paper at least. In reality, a journalist's work is never limited by hours. It all depends on deadlines. If you have a loose deadline, you can work for an hour and then scroll through Facebook until evening. But when the deadline is tight, you'll be up all night, barely sleeping, and yes, interviewing fish. I worked as a journalist for a while until I had to quit due to some life events that required me to take a break. That's also why I took a year off from YouTube, letting my little brother handle things. He's been screaming on screen, making funny moments, basically turning my channel into a disaster zone. Feels like just yesterday he took over. Time flies when he's an asshole. Now that I've recovered, I'm running a small grocery store and taking care of the family. I haven't forgotten the frustration I felt when I was asked to donate at the grocery store, so now, whenever someone buys something, I ask, "Sir, would you like to donate your spare change to the poor?" Karma hits hard, doesn't it? Well, that's the story of my life from birth to now. Next up, maybe I'll dive into my YouTube adventures when there's enough interest. And don't forget to check out my other videos. Thanks for watching, and see you next time!